Look at this one trying to infiltrate where he doesn't belong. Security Chief Greg Mason drags Simon Dean across scorching sand, onlookers filming as Simon's expensive watch catches the sunlight. Simon stands tall despite the public humiliation. Beachgoers whisper and point as sand clings to his tailored shorts. "I'd like to speak to the property manager." Greg's laugh cuts through the air as he exchanges smirks with his team. "You're looking at him, and I decide who stays and who goes. We keep this beach. Exclusive." Simon quietly takes out his phone, fingers moving with practiced precision as he makes a brief call while being escorted toward the parking lot. "I'll be back in 3 hours. Prepare your office," Simon states, voice unnervingly calm. Greg mockingly salutes. "Sure thing, buddy. We'll roll out the red carpet." The morning sun bathes Serenity Shores Resort in golden light as Simon Dean steps from his Bentley. At 45, he moves with quiet confidence, his linen shirt and designer sunglasses understated yet unmistakably premium. He pauses, taking in the sprawling beachfront property with an assessor's eye. Inside the security station, Greg Mason watches through tinted windows. "New arrival at the main entrance," he mutters into his radio. "Looks out of place." "Copy that," crackles the response. "Want us to intercept?" "Not yet. Let's see where he's heading." Simon approaches the welcome desk where a young attendant greets him with a tight smile that doesn't reach her eyes. 10 feet away, she had been laughing with a blonde couple. "Day pass, please," Simon requests, sliding his platinum card across the marble counter. The attendant glances at Greg, who gives an almost imperceptible nod. "That'll be $150, sir. Beach access only. The premium areas require membership." Simon notices a white family being charged $75 for what appears to be identical access. He says nothing, simply waits as his receipt prints. "You'll want to stay in the general section," the attendant adds, pointing vaguely. "Members-only areas are clearly marked." Simon nods, tucking the pass into his pocket. "Thank you." As he walks toward the beach, Greg motions to a junior guard. "Keep an eye on our newest guest. Make sure he stays where he belongs." "Problem?" the guard asks. "Just preventative measures," Greg replies. "These types sometimes don't understand the atmosphere we maintain here." Simon selects a spot on the pristine sand, precisely arranging his towel and small cooler. He feels the eyes tracking him but gives no indication. His phone rings and he answers with practiced discretion. "Yes, Janet, I'm on site now. The portfolio review looks promising. All assets appear as described in the prospectus. I'll make my final decision by this afternoon." A couple nearby exchanges glances, then deliberately repositions their chairs to create distance. The woman clutches her designer handbag closer. Simon ends his call, observing the subtle migration happening around him. He makes a note in his phone, then leans back, seemingly at ease despite being at the center of a slowly expanding circle of emptiness on an otherwise crowded beach. Simon's phone vibrates with an email notification. His eyes scan the screen, a brief smile of satisfaction crossing his face as he reviews the document. Subject line, Coastal Holdings Acquisition, Final Approval. He enlarges a section of the PDF, studying property details with focused attention. A shadow falls across his display. The junior security guard hovers uncomfortably close, legs planted in a stance of authority. "Excuse me, sir. I need to verify your beach access credentials." Simon looks up, noting the guard hasn't approached any other guests in the vicinity. "Of course." He produces the day pass purchased 30 minutes earlier. The guard examines it with exaggerated scrutiny. "This is insufficient for this section of the beach." Simon glances around at the unmarked sand. There are no signs indicating restricted areas, and those guests, he gestures to a family 20 feet away, have identical passes. "Our premium beach areas have certain standards," the guard replies, hand moving to his radio. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in the public section." "I'm quite comfortable here, thank you," Simon responds evenly. The radio crackles. Is there a problem, Rodney? Greg's voice carries an edge. Possible unauthorized access in Section A, the guard responds. Greg appears within minutes, authority radiating from his squared shoulders. He assesses Simon with a dismissive glance. Sir, I understand there's some confusion about beach access, Greg says, voice professionally cold. No confusion, Simon replies. I purchased a day pass and selected an unmarked area to relax. Greg's mouth tightens. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the public beach down the coast. Serenity Shores caters to a certain clientele with specific expectations about their surroundings. Simon maintains eye contact. I'd like to speak with management about your inconsistent policy enforcement. Greg puffs his chest slightly. I am the head of security and property management. My decision is final. Simon checks his watch, a subtle movement that doesn't escape Greg's notice. Something calculating flickers in Simon's eyes as he begins gathering his belongings with deliberate precision. Is there a specific rule I've violated? Simon asks. It's at management's discretion to determine appropriate use of our facilities, Greg answers, hand resting on his security badge. Greg brings his radio to his mouth, eyes never leaving Simon. Situation at Sector 3. Need additional personnel for guest removal. 2 security guards materialize within minutes, muscling through sunbathers who look up from their relaxation. Conversations pause. Heads turn. A spectacle forms with Simon at its unwilling center. Is there a specific rule I've violated? Simon repeats, voice steady despite the audience gathering around them. Greg ignores the question, addressing his team instead. Escort this gentleman from the premises. The guards move in synchronized precision, each gripping one of Simon's arms despite his lack of resistance. The sun catches the face of his Patek Philippe watch, a timepiece worth more than the guards' combined monthly salaries. His Tom Ford sunglasses slide slightly as they lift him to his feet. My belongings, Simon says, nodding toward his small cooler and beach bag. We'll have someone bring those to the exit, Greg replies, making no move to ensure it happens. They march Simon through the crowded beach, a walk of shame designed for maximum visibility. Phones emerge from beach bags. Videos begin recording. Simon's face remains impassive, but his eyes register every witness, every angle, every moment of the orchestrated humiliation. This seems unnecessarily public, Simon observes quietly. Should have thought about that before coming where you're not welcome, one guard mutters, just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. A woman in a sun hat rises halfway from her chair. Excuse me, is this really necessary? He wasn't bothering anyone. Greg turned sharply. Ma'am, we handle security concerns based on protocols you're not privy to, unless you'd prefer similar assistance leaving. She sinks back down, eyes averted but clearly uncomfortable. I'd like to speak with the property owner, Simon says as they reach the boardwalk, his leather sandals scraping against the wooden planks. Greg laughs, the sound performing for his audience of guards and gawking guests. Trust me, the owner would back me 100%. We have standards here, very specific standards. They don't slow their pace through the resort's manicured gardens, past families who stop mid-conversation to watch. Children point. A teenager whispers to her mother. Simon is marched through the elegant lobby where just an hour earlier he had been processed as a paying guest. The receptionist who sold him the day pass suddenly becomes intensely focused on her computer screen. At the parking lot, they finally release his arms. Greg steps forward, smoothing his uniform with self-importance. Your belongings will be brought out shortly. Don't return to Serenity Shores, Mr. He pauses, realizing he never asked Simon's name. Dean, Simon supplies. Simon Dean. Mr. Dean, Greg continues, this establishment isn't a good fit for your recreational needs. Simon straightens his shirt, dignity intact despite the forced march. His expression reveals nothing, but his eyes perform calculations, assessments, measurements of the humiliation just endured. He straightens to his full height. "We'll see about that," he says, voice so controlled it barely registers as a threat. Simon slides into the butter-soft leather seat of his Bentley Continental, the door closing with an expensive thud that seals out the world. He straightens his collar, adjusts his tie clip, and allows himself exactly 3 deep breaths, a ritual of composure practiced over decades of high-stakes negotiations. The air conditioning purrs to life as he taps a sequence on his phone. The screen splits to display investment portfolios alongside property holdings, Elevation Capital's latest acquisitions highlighted in blue. Simon Dean, CEO, founder, and strategic investment specialist with over $3 billion in managed assets. Specialization, hospitality industry restructuring. "Janet, activate protocol acquisition," he speaks into the phone. "Yes, Serenity Shores, send the full portfolio to my secure drive immediately." He swipes through documents as the files transfer, studying blueprints and ownership structures with practiced efficiency. Inside the security office, Greg leans against his desk, entertaining his team with an embellished retelling. "You should have seen his face when I told him the owner would back me up." "Did he cause any actual problems?" asks the youngest guard. "Prevention is our policy," Greg replies. "These people get comfortable, next thing you know, the whole atmosphere changes. Management appreciates my proactive approach." Back in the Bentley, Simon initiates another call. "Thomas, remember that pending coastal acquisition we were considering? I need you to confirm if Serenity Shores is part of Coastal Holdings Group." The attorney's voice comes through the speakers. "It's their flagship property. The paperwork was finalized this morning at 9:37 a.m. "Congratulations, Simon, you now own the entire portfolio." Simon's expression doesn't change, but his posture shifts subtly, the stance of a predator who has confirmed its target. "I'm going to need you to prepare termination paperwork and policy violations documentation. And bring the deed, the original, not copies." "Something happen?" Thomas asks. "Let's just say I've completed my due diligence inspection. The management requires immediate restructuring." Simon ends the call, opens his trunk, and removes a garment bag. Within minutes, he transforms from casual beachgoer to corporate executive, charcoal Tom Ford suit, crisp white shirt, subtle platinum cufflinks. He slips his beach attire into the trunk, along with any trace of the humiliated guest who left these premises. One final call. "Marcus Whitfield, please. Tell him Simon Dean is calling regarding Coastal Holdings leadership transition." A pause. "Yes, I'll hold for the regional director." Simon drives his Bentley to the front entrance of Serenity Shores, where a valet startles at the vehicle's approach. He steps out, briefcase in hand, every inch the billionaire CEO rather than the dismissed beachgoer from hours earlier. At the reception desk, the same attendant from this morning fails to recognize him in his transformed state. "Welcome to Serenity Shores, sir. How may we assist you?" Before Simon can answer, a security guard approaches. "Sir, I believe there's been a mistake. You were asked to leave the premises earlier today." Simon removes a business card from his wallet, heavy cardstock with minimalist embossing, and places it on the counter. "I have an appointment with Regional Director Whitfield. He's expecting me." The guard looks from the card to Simon's face, confusion dawning. "I'll need to verify that with Mr. Mason." "By all means," Simon replies. "I look forward to our reunion." Regional Director Marcus Whitfield's corner office boasts panoramic views of the coastline that established Serenity Shores as a premium destination. The 60-year-old executive rises from behind his mahogany desk as Simon enters, extending his hand with the practiced warmth of corporate hospitality. "Mr. Dean, what an unexpected pleasure. When corporate informed me about the acquisition, I had no idea you'd be visiting personally on day one." Simon accepts the handshake with professional courtesy. "I believe in hands-on assessment, Mr. Whitfield. First impressions matter in this industry." The door opens without a knock. Greg Mason freezes mid-stride, his confident entrance faltering as he recognizes the man seated across from his boss. Blood drains from his face, leaving behind an ashen mask of dawning comprehension. "Greg," Marcus says, oblivious to the tension crackling between the two men. "Meet Simon Dean, CEO of Elevation Capital. As of this morning, the new owner of Coastal Holdings, including Serenity Shores." Greg's mouth works silently before producing words. "Mr. Dean, there seems to have been a misunderstanding earlier." "Mr. Mason and I had an interaction earlier today," Simon interrupts smoothly, addressing Marcus rather than Greg, "which presents an excellent opportunity to review your security protocols." Greg steps forward, hands spread in placating gesture. "Sir, I was simply doing my job, maintaining the standards our guests expect." "And what standards would those be exactly?" Simon asks, voice dangerously soft. Marcus glances between them, confusion giving way to concern. "What interaction are we discussing?" "I'd like to see the incident reports for all guest removals over the past 6 months, Simon continues, ignoring the question. "Categorized by stated reason and demographic information." Greg shifts his weight. "That's not something we typically track." "Then we'll use the raw reports," Simon replies, opening his laptop. "My team has already accessed your security database. The pattern is illuminating." A spreadsheet appears on the wall screen, rows of data organized by date, incident type, and guest description. The pattern becomes immediately apparent, discriminatory enforcement highlighted in undeniable statistics. Marcus pales as he processes the implications. "Greg, what is this?" "I'd also like to view today's security footage," Simon adds. "From approximately 10:45 a.m. at Beach Section A." Greg steps forward. "That won't be necessary. I can explain everything." Simon's gaze is arctic. "Actually, it is necessary. For the lawsuit." The conference room fills with tense silence as Vanessa Perkins, HR director, joins the meeting. Her reading glasses hang from a chain around her neck, bouncing slightly as she hurries in with a leather portfolio clutched against her chest. "I brought the employee handbook and guest policy documents as requested," she says, glancing nervously between the men. Simon accepts the materials with a nod. "Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Let's compare stated policy versus actual enforcement." His fingers flip through pages with surgical precision, highlighting sections with yellow markers. Section 5.3 states all guests with valid day passes have equal access to non-membership areas. Section 8.7 prohibits discriminatory enforcement of rules. On the wall screen, security footage plays in high definition. Greg's face contorts as he watches himself dragging Simon across the beach, the public humiliation now preserved and replayed for his superiors. Vanessa removes her glasses, looking physically ill. "This footage is disturbing." "There's context missing," Greg interjects, perspiration beading along his hairline. "We had received complaints." "About what specific behavior?" Simon asks, sliding forward a tablet displaying a compiled spreadsheet. "Because I've accessed the complaint records. 3 years of data shows a disturbing pattern of minority guests being removed following complaints that documented no actual rule violations." Greg's defense crumbles visibly. "We have unwritten policies about maintaining the resort's atmosphere." "Unwritten policies," Simon repeats, the words hanging in the air like an indictment. "Who created these unwritten policies, Mr. Mason?" Greg glances desperately at Marcus, seeking alliance. "Management has always emphasized exclusive customer experience. I was implementing the standards set by—" "Let's be clear," Marcus interrupts, distancing himself. "No one instructed you to target guests based on appearance." "Perhaps not explicitly," Simon says, voice calm but penetrating. "But implicitly? Through hiring practices, promotion patterns, and which behaviors were rewarded? The data suggests otherwise." He pulls up a new document on screen, financial projections with legal exposure estimates highlighted in alarming red. "This single incident alone constitutes grounds for a 7-figure discrimination lawsuit. The pattern evident in your record suggests class action potential approaching $50 million in damages." Marcus blanches. Surely we can resolve this internally. This isn't just about one incident or one employee, Simon replies, closing the folder with deliberate care. This is about systemic failure at multiple levels. The executive boardroom fills with tension as additional chairs are brought in. The full leadership team assembles, operations director, finance chief, marketing head, all watching with guarded expressions as Simon stands at the head of the table, command assumed without discussion. Before we continue, Simon begins, slides appearing on the massive screen behind him, I want to share what my team discovered during our pre-acquisition audit. Charts materialize showing guest complaints sorted by demographics, staff diversity ratios compared to industry standards, internal promotion statistics, all revealing systemic patterns impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Serenity Shores isn't unique, Simon continues. Coastal Holdings' entire portfolio demonstrates similar discrepancies. Greg shifts uncomfortably as all eyes briefly turn to him. He clears his throat. With respect, Mr. Dean, selective data can paint a misleading picture. Perhaps you'd explain these specific incidents then, Simon interrupts, displaying security footage from multiple properties. Similar scenarios play out. Minority guests confronted, questioned, removed, always with the same justification of maintaining standards. Greg attempts damage control. Security personnel make judgment calls based on behavioral indicators, such as, Simon asks, voice dangerously quiet. Demeanor? Attire? Compliance with staff requests? Greg trails off, realizing each word deepens his predicament. The executives exchange glances, silently calculating their own culpability and potential escape routes. Simon introduces two people who have been silently observing from the corner. This is Thomas Wayland, my attorney, and Dr. Amara Lewis, diversity consultant. They've been investigating Coastal Holdings for 3 months. Comprehension dawns across the room. This wasn't random. Simon hadn't simply experienced discrimination. He'd been expecting it. You set this up, Greg blurts, desperation breaking through his professional veneer. I gave you an opportunity to demonstrate your standard procedures, Simon corrects. You performed exactly as our investigation predicted. The executives turn on Greg instantly. The marketing director speaks first. Greg's actions don't reflect our corporate values. Don't they? Simon interrupts. The problem isn't just Mr. Mason, it's the culture that empowered him. Greg, sensing his role as scapegoat, lashes out. I was implementing unofficial company policy. Everyone in this room knows our target demographic and what they expect. Exclusive means exclusive. Simon's hand moves to his breast pocket, removing a small recording device. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Mason. The executives stare at the device, then at Greg, then at Simon, who smiles thinly. I didn't buy this company just for the real estate. I bought it for reform. The conference room has transformed. Legal representatives now line one wall. A professional videographer sets up equipment in the corner. Press credentials are being verified at the door while Simon stands at the window, silhouetted against the ocean view that sold for millions in real estate brochures. He turns, command effortless in his tailored suit, authority radiating not from volume, but presence. The room quiets instantly. For those just joining us, I'm Simon Dean, CEO of Elevation Capital and as of 9:37 this morning, owner of Coastal Holdings Group, including all Serenity Shores properties. He moves to the center of the room, claiming the space without apology. What you witnessed earlier wasn't simply an unfortunate incident. It was the culmination of a 3-month investigation into discriminatory practices across the hospitality industry. The screen behind him illuminates with his biography. Achievements most in the room had frantically Googled during the brief recess. Forbes 30 under 30 in his youth, self-made billionaire by 40, philanthropist focusing on economic equity initiatives, board member for civil rights organizations. 23 years ago, I was removed from the Palmetto Resort in Charleston. I had recently sold my first tech company, had the financial means to be there, but according to security, I didn't fit the establishment's image. Images appear on screen. a younger Simon being escorted from a different luxury property. That day changed my trajectory. I realized wealth alone wouldn't shield me from discrimination, but ownership, that changes the power dynamic entirely. Understanding dawns across the faces watching him. This wasn't random. This wasn't opportunistic revenge. This was calculated, strategic, and years in development. Elevation Capital doesn't just acquire properties. We transform cultures. Serenity Shores is the fourth hospitality group we've purchased specifically because our audits identified systemic discrimination issues. Video testimonials play briefly. Former employees and guests from previously acquired properties speaking about cultural transformations. I don't just buy properties, I buy problems to fix them. Greg Mason slumps in his chair, the realization crushing. He hasn't encountered an ordinary victim, but has become an unwitting example in a much larger reformation. Windermere Resorts showed similar patterns before our acquisition in 2019. Their market value has increased 47% since implementing our inclusive excellence protocols. Discriminatory practices aren't just morally reprehensible, they're bad business. The executive team exchanges glances, financial interest suddenly aligning with ethical imperatives. My specialized team has developed a comprehensive approach to corporate reformation. Simon gestures to the professionals lined against the wall. Experts in organizational psychology, legal compliance, diversity training, marketing repositioning, and community engagement. He places two folders on the table, precisely aligned with the edge. You have two options. Option 1. We proceed with a class action lawsuit based on the evidence compiled. The litigation will be public, protracted, and painful, financially and reputationally. The executives shift uncomfortably. Option 2. Comprehensive reformation. My team implements protocol acquisition, our established process for transforming problematic companies from within. New policies, training, accountability systems, community outreach, and reparative justice for those previously harmed. Simon's attorney distributes documents detailing both options, the legal and financial implications starkly contrasted. This isn't punishment. It's correction. And for those who embrace it, the results benefit everyone: employees, guests, shareholders, and communities. The marketing director raises her hand tentatively. The Windermere transition, was it as confrontational as this? Each acquisition follows the same protocol. We identify the problem, document extensively, create an irrefutable case study, and then provide a pathway to redemption. The confrontation level depends entirely on the resistance encountered. Simon walks slowly around the table, stopping directly behind Greg's chair. Mr. Mason isn't the disease. He's a symptom. Replacing him without addressing the underlying culture would change nothing. That said, Simon leans forward slightly, voice directed at Greg but audible to all. You thought I didn't belong on your beach. Now I own it. The simplicity of the statement lands with perfect weight. Several executives flinch visibly. Simon returns to the head of the table, opening a sleek presentation folder. Phase 1 begins immediately. Internal audit, policy revisions, staff training. Phase 2 launches next quarter with community engagement and reputation rehabilitation. By this time next year, Serenity Shores will be the industry standard for inclusive luxury. The regional director clears his throat. And if some of us don't wish to participate in this transformation? Simon smiles, not unkindly, but without compromise. The hospitality industry is vast. Those who prefer the old model are free to seek opportunities elsewhere. Though I should mention, he gestures to the press representatives, this case study goes public tomorrow. Association with resistance to reform may limit your options considerably. Morning light streams through the windows of what was Greg Mason's office. The nameplate has been removed, leaving faint outlines on the door. Inside, security personnel pack his personal items into cardboard boxes while HR representatives inventory company property. His radio, badge, and keys rest on the desk, symbols of authority now reclaimed. Administrative leave pending full investigation, Vanessa Perkins explains to the security team gathered in the break room. Their faces reflect a mixture of shock, concern, and, in some cases, poorly concealed satisfaction. Effective immediately, we'll be reviewing all operational procedures in the interim. Across the resort, legal teams conduct interviews in private rooms. Current and former employees speak freely under confidentiality agreements, years of observations finally finding voice. "He always made us approach certain guests first," admits a junior guard. "Never explicitly mentioned race, but the pattern was clear. If we didn't follow his instincts, we'd be assigned to overnight shifts or maintenance areas." In the corporate offices, forensic accountants pore over records of dismissed complaints and settlements, small payments made to quietly resolve misunderstandings without acknowledgement of wrongdoing. 17 settlements in 3 years, Thomas Wayland notes, organizing documentation into evidence categories. Always structured to prevent public disclosure, always beneath the threshold requiring board notification. Simon reviews each file, noting patterns. Cross-reference these with the employees who processed them. "I want to know who was complicit and who was simply following orders." At the beachfront, installation crews replace signage throughout the property. Reserved markers disappear, replaced by clear policy displays in multiple languages. Security cameras are repositioned to cover previously unmonitored selective enforcement areas. "The new system records all guest interactions," explains the technology consultant to newly appointed interim security director Alicia Washington. "Guards will wear body cameras with automatic activation during any rule enforcement conversation." Washington, a former military police officer with hospitality security experience, nods approvingly. "Accountability protects everyone, guests and staff alike." Social media explodes as footage of Simon's removal goes viral. The hashtag Serenity Shores trends nationally, accompanied by thousands of similar accounts from minority guests at resorts across the country. "This isn't isolated," Dr. Amara Lewis explains during an emergency executive session. "Your property became the flashpoint, but the reaction reveals an industry-wide issue. People have been waiting for permission to speak up." Marketing executives monitor brand mentions with growing alarm. "Reservation cancellations are up 40% since yesterday," reports the social media director. Review platforms show a 3.2-star drop in average ratings. Simon remains unperturbed. Short-term volatility was anticipated. The recovery plan is already in motion. Greg sits in his living room, television muted as his face appears on multiple news channels. His phone rings constantly, journalists seeking comment, former colleagues distancing themselves, employment agencies suddenly unable to place him. On screen, competing resorts issue statements about their long-standing commitment to inclusivity and zero tolerance for discrimination. His attorney delivers the terms of his separation: no severance, no references, potential personal liability for documented violations. The conversation is brief and one-sided. "They're making an example of me," Greg protests, voice hollow with disbelief. "They're holding you accountable," his attorney corrects. "And given the evidence, you should consider yourself fortunate criminal charges aren't being pursued." Marcus Whitfield stands at his office window, watching as news vans assemble at the property entrance. His phone vibrates with a text from the corporate board. "Meeting tomorrow. Prepare complete explanation of how this happened under your supervision." A knock at his door reveals Simon, who enters without waiting for invitation. "The board is looking for someone to blame," Marcus says, gesturing to his phone. "They'll want a scapegoat beyond Mason." "That would be counterproductive," Simon replies. "I've already communicated that reformation requires acknowledging systemic issues, not isolating convenient targets." Marcus studies him, calculating survival odds. "What exactly do you want from me?" "A choice. Lead the transformation or step aside for someone who will. Your operational knowledge is valuable, but only if coupled with genuine commitment to change." In a quiet corner of the resort restaurant, Simon meets with minority employees who have requested an audience. They speak hesitantly at first, then with increasing confidence as they realize their experiences are being truly heard. I've been passed over for promotion 4 times. Shares a desk attendant with 10 years service. Always told I needed more seasoning while watching less experienced colleagues advance. A groundskeeper describes strategic scheduling that kept minority staff invisible during peak guest hours. A valet explains the unwritten rules about which guests received premium parking assistance. Simon takes notes personally, asking clarifying questions without judgment. This reformation isn't theoretical for you, it's your daily reality. Your insights will guide our approach. Email servers strain under the volume as former guests contact the resort, some with complaints finally voiced, others with messages of support. A dedicated response team works around the clock, personally addressing each communication. We've established a reparation protocol, explains Simon's customer experience specialist. Guests who experienced discrimination receive formal apologies, full refunds, and premium return stays. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. Marketing teams develop new campaigns emphasizing authentic inclusivity. Not diversity as decoration, the creative director emphasizes, but genuine welcome as our core identity. Industry publications request interviews. Hospitality associations convene emergency best practices panels. Competing resort groups quietly commission their own internal audits. You've started something that extends far beyond Serenity Shores, Dr. Lewis tells Simon as they review progress reports. The ripple effect is already changing industry standards. Simon nods, neither triumphant nor satisfied but purposefully engaged. Change happens when silence becomes more expensive than reformation. Greg attempts damage control through a carefully worded apology statement drafted by his personal attorney. The language is deliberately vague, acknowledging misunderstandings and communication failures without admitting discriminatory intent. Social media dissects the statement within hours, highlighting phrases typical of non-apologies. His attempt at image rehabilitation backfires spectacularly, cementing public perception of unrepentant prejudice. A former colleague forwards the statement to Simon with a single question. Is this sufficient? Accountability isn't measured by words, Simon replies, but by actions and their consequences. His statement is irrelevant to our path forward. 1 week after the incident, Elevation Capital issues a comprehensive press release detailing the transformation initiative at Serenity Shores. The announcement includes the establishment of a hospitality industry equity fund, offering resources to properties committed to implementing similar reforms. This isn't about punishing one company, Simon explains in the accompanying video statement. It's about elevating an entire industry to serve all guests with equal excellence. Market analysts note Coastal Holdings stock stabilizing after initial decline, then beginning gradual recovery as institutional investors respond positively to the long-term governance improvements. The Dean method, as financial publications dub the approach, gains recognition as a model for ethical investment, identifying problematic companies not to destroy them but to transform them from within. Marcus Whitfield makes his decision. In a private meeting with Simon, he acknowledges his role in enabling the discriminatory culture through passive acceptance. I told myself I was focusing on the financial metrics, that the day-to-day operations weren't my concern, he admits. But that was just convenient blindness. Recognition is the first step, Simon responds. Are you prepared for the next ones? They'll be more difficult. Marcus straightens in his chair. I want to be part of the solution. Not to protect my position, but because I've seen enough to know change is necessary and overdue. Simon studies him, measuring sincerity against self-preservation. You'll face resistance from those who benefited from the old system. Former allies will become critics. The transformation isn't just institutional, it's personal. I understand, Marcus replies. And I'm ready. 30 days after Simon's humiliation on the beach, Serenity Shores hosts a community open house. Local organizations representing diverse populations tour the property, providing feedback on accessibility, inclusivity, and cultural sensitivity. New hiring initiatives actively recruit from historically underrepresented communities. Training programs emphasize not just non-discrimination, but authentic welcome. Anonymous reporting systems empower employees to flag concerns without fear of retaliation. The property hums with purposeful activity, not just damage control, but genuine reinvention. Construction crews renovate spaces to accommodate varied needs and preferences. Menu options expand to include diverse cuisines. Staff name badges now include multiple language capabilities. In the executive offices, Simon reviews progress metrics with his transformation team. The numbers tell a story of painful but necessary evolution. Retention challenges alongside recruitment successes, revenue fluctuations stabilizing into sustainable patterns, guest satisfaction scores recovering and then exceeding previous benchmarks. We're seeing exactly what we've observed in previous transformations, Simon notes. Initial resistance, followed by acceptance, followed by recognition of improved outcomes for everyone involved. Dr. Lewis points to employee survey results. The most encouraging indicator is the internal culture shift. Staff report feeling valued for their contributions rather than their conformity. Simon nods. Satisfaction evident but measured. Sustainable change isn't imposed from above, it's embraced from within. We're witnessing the beginning, not the completion. The administrative hearing room feels smaller than its actual dimensions. Windowless walls creating an atmosphere of inescapable scrutiny. Greg Mason sits alone at the respondents' table, his attorney beside him maintaining professional composure despite the overwhelming evidence stacked against his client. Across the room, the disciplinary panel, 2 executives from Elevation Capital, an independent employment law specialist, and Marcus Whitfield representing Serenity Shores Management, review documentation in silence. This hearing will determine whether termination for cause is warranted based on documented policy violations, announces the chairperson, voice neutral but authoritative. Mr. Mason has received all evidence in advance and will have full opportunity to respond. The wall screen activates. Security footage from multiple incidents plays in sequence. Greg's interactions with guests demonstrating unmistakable patterns of selective enforcement. Timestamps establish chronology. Property maps highlight inconsistent application of rules across different beach sections. Greg shifts uncomfortably as his own image appears repeatedly, his body language and tone revealing biases, his words attempted to disguise. Witness statements follow, both guests and staff providing testimony that corroborates the visual evidence. Junior guards describe receiving informal training in identifying guests who didn't belong. Reservation staff explain unwritten protocols for assigning less desirable rooms to certain demographics despite availability. In the Torres incident from March, the HR representative notes, the guest was removed for creating disturbance, despite security footage showing no such behavior. The same day, similar actions by other guests received no response. Greg's attorney interjects. My client was implementing standards established by management, not personal preferences. Please direct us to any written policy authorizing differential treatment, replies the chairperson. The silence extends uncomfortably before the attorney concedes. The expectations were understood rather than documented. Greg watches resignation spread across his attorney's face, the realization that defensible position doesn't exist within the mountain of evidence. A former employee, appearing via video conference, describes being reprimanded after failing to scrutinize a minority guest's credentials. Mr. Mason told me I needed to develop better instincts about who belonged at Serenity Shores. The pattern becomes undeniable with each presentation, not isolated incidents, but systematic behavior spanning years. Mr. Mason, you have the right to respond to these allegations, the chairperson states. Greg straightens his tie, attempting dignity despite his crumbling position. I maintained the standards expected by our clientele. The resort's reputation was built on exclusivity and atmosphere. Please define atmosphere in specific, non-discriminatory terms, requests the employment specialist. Greg falters. Guest comfort and expectations. Which guests' comfort, which expectations, follows the specialist. This is selective enforcement of policies that everyone followed, Greg counters, desperation edging into his voice. I'm being scapegoated for implementing the resort's business model. The final evidence appears on screen. Screenshots from Greg's personal social media accounts showing racist memes, derogatory comments about minority guests, and boasts about keeping the beach clean with coded language understood by his followers. His attorney's shoulders slump visibly. The deliberation takes 17 minutes. The panel returns with a unanimous decision. Termination with cause, forfeiture of all benefits, permanent record in industry databases. Greg is escorted from the property by the same security team he once commanded. His personal items await in bankers' boxes by the service entrance. His security credential deactivates with an audible click as he passes the final checkpoint. 3 weeks later, Greg sits across from a hospitality recruiter, the woman's expression carefully professional as she reviews his application. There's a gap in your employment history, she notes. I recently left Serenity Shores, Greg responds, choosing words carefully. Her fingers move across her keyboard. Her expression changes subtly, recognition dawning as search results populate her screen. I see. She closes his file. Unfortunately, we don't have suitable positions at this time. It's the 7th identical response this week. In the employee cafeteria at Serenity Shores, staff watch news coverage of industry-wide diversity initiatives being announced by major hotel chains, all citing recent events without naming Serenity Shores directly. They're all scrambling, observes a veteran housekeeper, checking their own practices before they become the next example. Simon observes Greg from his car, parked across from the budget hotel where the former security director now works night audit, the only position he could secure in the industry. No confrontation, no gloating, just quiet assessment of consequences naturally flowing from actions. As Simon prepares to drive away, Greg notices him. Their eyes meet briefly across the distance. Greg steps forward aggressively, then stops, recognizing the futility of any confrontation. I was set up, Greg calls out, voice tight with resentment. You targeted me specifically. Simon rolls down his window. I didn't set you up. I just gave you the opportunity to be yourself on camera. The ballroom of the International Hospitality Conference buzzes with anticipation as industry leaders gather for the keynote address. Simon stands at the podium, his presentation titled, Inclusive Excellence, the Business Case for Authentic Welcome. 6 months ago, a single incident at Serenity Shores revealed systemic issues throughout our industry, he begins. Today I'm sharing measurable outcomes of our transformation initiative. Data slides appear on massive screens, guest satisfaction metrics, revenue comparisons, staff retention statistics, all demonstrating positive trends following implemented changes. Discrimination wasn't just ethically wrong, it was financially unsustainable, Simon continues. Our reformed properties now outperform their previous revenue models by an average of 22%. In the audience, CEOs from competing resort groups take notes, many having already initiated their own internal audits after witnessing Serenity Shores' public transformation. Across the country, training sessions unfold in hotel conference rooms. Elevation Capital's standardized inclusive excellence curriculum, now licensed to 17 major hospitality groups, focuses on practical scenarios rather than theoretical concepts. The difference is measurability, explains Dr. Lewis to facilitators during certification. We're not asking for good intentions. We're requiring verifiable outcomes. Managers role-play challenging situations, practice intervention techniques, and learn to recognize unconscious bias in operational decisions. The emphasis remains on both moral imperatives and business advantages, a dual approach that gains traction even among initially resistant participants. In Serenity Shores' administrative offices, HR processes the latest round of settlement agreements for former guests who experienced discrimination. Each case receives personal attention, financial compensation, and formal acknowledgement of harm caused. The response has been overwhelmingly positive, reports the reconciliation team leader. Most recipients express more appreciation for the acknowledgement than the monetary component. The resort's reputation gradually transforms, negative reviews replaced by accounts of exceptional service and authentic welcome. Reservation rates rebound, then exceed previous peaks as new demographics discover the reimagined experience. Industry publications feature Serenity Shores as a case study in corporate transformation. The Dean method becomes shorthand for comprehensive reformation rather than superficial diversity initiatives. At a prestigious hospitality awards ceremony, Simon declines the Innovative Leadership Award, instead directing recognition toward the implementation team and reformed staff. The real achievement belongs to those who embraced change rather than those who merely mandated it, he explains. On financial news networks, analysts highlight the serenity effect on hospitality stocks. Companies demonstrating genuine inclusivity commitments, outperforming those maintaining traditional exclusivity models. The market is rewarding reformation, notes a prominent investment advisor. Companies proactively addressing discrimination issues see significantly stronger investor confidence than those waiting for public incidents to force change. In a suburban grocery store, Greg Mason restocks shelves during overnight shift. The position, far removed from hospitality, pays less than half his former salary. A television in the break room features a special report on hospitality industry reforms, Serenity Shores prominently highlighted as the catalyst. Greg turns away, unable to watch the world moving forward without him. Marcus Whitfield leads a regional directors meeting, his presentation showcasing diversity metrics across all properties in the portfolio. The transformation in his leadership approach is evident, confidence now stemming from ethical clarity rather than hierarchical authority. Our competitive advantage isn't our facilities, he explains to his team. It's our commitment to serving every guest with equal excellence. Statistical graphs display across Serenity Shores' executive dashboard. Demographic diversity among both guests and staff steadily increasing. Guest satisfaction scores at historic highs. Positive mentions on social media platforms showing exponential growth. The property, once known for exclusivity, now markets itself as luxury for all, its beaches and amenities filled with diverse guests experiencing genuine welcome. 1 year after being escorted from Serenity Shores Beach, Simon reclines on the same stretch of sand. The resort buzzes with activity around him. Families of various backgrounds enjoying the pristine shoreline, staff moving with attentive efficiency among all guests without discriminatory patterns. Alicia Washington, now permanently appointed as security director, approaches with professional courtesy. Her uniform bears the new Serenity Shores emblem, a stylized wave embracing diverse elements. "Everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Dean?" she asks, not because he owns the property, but because this question is now standard for all guests. "Perfect, thank you," Simon responds. "How's the new reporting system working?" Incident reports down 78% year over year. Guest satisfaction up 34%. She smiles. Turns out treating everyone with equal respect solves most security issues before they begin. Simon nods, satisfaction evident in his relaxed posture. He observes a young security guard assisting an elderly black couple with beach chairs, the same service now provided consistently to all guests requiring assistance. A woman settles her towel nearby, recognition flickering across her features. "I was here that day," she says after a moment. "When they—" She trails off, gesturing vaguely toward the boardwalk. "When I was removed from the beach," Simon completes matter-of-factly. "You were the guest who tried to intervene," he adds, recalling her hesitant attempt to question his treatment. She nods, embarrassment evident. "I should have done more." "You did something," Simon acknowledges. "Most remained silent. Change requires both bold action and small gestures of conscience." Later that afternoon, Simon joins Marcus Whitfield for the dedication ceremony of the newly renamed Justice Cove, the beach section formerly designated for premium guests, now bearing a plaque honoring civil rights pioneers in the hospitality industry. Our occupancy rates have never been higher, Marcus notes, watching diverse guests mingle throughout the property. Turns out exclusivity was limiting our potential market considerably. Simon studies the resort's transformation, not just in policy but in atmosphere. The most valuable change isn't measured in revenue. Staff retention, Marcus agrees. 92% since implementing the new culture initiatives. People want to work where their humanity is respected. A young executive approaches with quarterly results. Profits exceeding projections by 27%, guest return rates establishing new benchmarks, job applications from top hospitality talent, overwhelming HR resources. The numbers validate what we already knew, Simon observes. Ethical business is good business. As evening approaches, Simon reads a letter delivered to his suite, handwritten on personal stationery rather than corporate letterhead. Your transformation of Serenity Shores inspired me to challenge discriminatory practices at my family's restaurant chain, writes a young entrepreneur from Chicago. We've implemented your inclusive excellence protocols with similar results, both moral and financial. Thank you for showing that change is possible from within. Simon adds the letter to a growing collection. Notes from business leaders, hospitality workers, and guests impacted by the ripple effects of one confrontation on one beach. His phone buzzes with a message from Thomas Wayland. Acquisition target identified in cruise industry. Similar discrimination patterns documented. Preliminary investigation complete. Proceed? Simon responds. Schedule meeting for next week. Protocol acquisition. The sunset paints Serenity Shores in golden light as Simon walks the same path where he was once forcibly escorted away. Staff members greet him by name, not because he owns the property, but because they now learn all guests' names regardless of appearance or perceived status. He passes the spot where Greg once stood, authority now replaced by accountability. The security station operates with transparent practices, interactions recorded, policies clearly posted in multiple languages. Simon pauses at the shoreline, waves gently erasing footprints without discrimination or preference. The transformation remains imperfect, unconscious biases requiring ongoing awareness, systems needing constant refinement, but the fundamental shift is undeniable. A family asks if he would take their photo, handing him their camera without hesitation or assessment of his worthiness. This simple act of everyday trust, the assumption of belonging, represents the most profound change. Simon smiles, accepting the camera. Change doesn't come from fighting the darkness, he reflects silently. It comes from owning the light. If this story resonated with you, this is just the beginning. Beat Stories brings you narratives of justice, strategy, and transformation that show how real change happens in our world. Each week, we explore new scenarios where underdogs become changemakers through intelligence, patience, and strategic action. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode of Beat Stories. Each like and share helps us reach more people with these powerful narratives of justice and transformation.
Every time someone stands up, speaks out, or refuses to be erased, a new story is born. At Beat Stories, we archive that courage. Subscribe now and help us keep these moments alive, because the more we share them, the harder they are to ignore.